afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our service shop.
It's Mr. Clean.
We're in the middle of our PDI inspection on this 2020 Newmar Ventana here. PDI inspection, that's the one you hear Doug talk about all the time, where we touch every system on the coach, we inspect everything, all the way from the roof down to the engine service, even changing the AA batteries in your TV remotes. But one of the first things that we noticed on this Ventana here was that the entry door fabric here was actually shrinking and bubbling. So when it was shrinking, it was pulling out from underneath the window trim, the side trim, and exposing all of this wood here. So unfortunately, I kind of jumped the gun and I couldn't really show you how we take it off, but taking it off is pretty simple. But the fabric itself, the edges of it were just curling back and exposing this wood. So we ripped it off, and this being a 4-year-old coach, I wasn't particularly a fan of 4-year-old fabric already shrinking and bubbling. So instead of going back with Newmar's OEM fabric, what we did was we went on Amazon and found a fabric that's fleece back, the same exact color and material, and much more heavy duty. This fabric is thicker, and I know it's hard to show you on the video here, but we'll throw in a little clip of what we got off Amazon in case you actually want to do this project yourself. But this stuff is much more heavy duty. It's got some serious weight to it. So I'll show you guys how we actually install this fabric. I'll show you how we take everything off the doors, the materials we use, and actually real quick we'll jump over to me giving you an example of this 2015 Allegro Red here. It's actually doing the same thing that the Newmar was. This tends to be a fairly common problem, which is why I kind of want to show you guys how we do this just in case you're having the same problem on your coach. Instead of this one peeling back and having the same shrinkage, they've actually stapled, so there's no ability for it to shrink. But this one is bubbling from where the adhesive is actually letting go of the fabric itself. It's bubbling out, so this one also needs redone as well. The first things first, since we already have our fabric off, we were waiting on the fabric to come in, so I put the door back together, that way we could come in and out. All of the trim pieces on the side has to come off here. The door handle assembly right here has got to come off, and so does this trim for the window. So to get off the trim on the sides of your doors, easiest way I found to do it is just take a flathead screwdriver like this, and you want to push in and push towards the door, and it should just pop right out. So this trim actually has a ridge that whenever you put it in, I don't know if you can hear this on the video, but it actually snaps into place. So you'll want to push towards the door and pull out, and of course this piece of trim will be replacing. But we'll go ahead and do that same thing for all the trim going around the door, and then after that we'll get started on taking off the door handle. To actually take off the door handle assembly, this one's as easy as it gets. First things first, you're going to want to pull off this little red cap. Don't lose that, so put it somewhere safe. We've got a T20 bit here for our T20 headed screws. We've got 3 of them. So all we'll do with that is just take these 3 screws out, and also don't lose those. But once we get these out of here, I'll show you how easy this is to get your door handle off of the coach. If I can get the screw out. The door handle itself should just pull out of place, and then we're going to kind of work this trim piece right off of the door handle. We'll let this sit here for just a second, and then we'll do away with this for now. The last step that we're going to have to do is taking off this window trim here. So before you do that, this trim helps pinch your window into place. So like we have, make sure you at least put some tape on the back side of your window, that way it doesn't just fall forward. They're going to be all square-headed self-tappers here in this window trim. As soon as those come out, we'll have them all the way up through this trim here. Once you get all of those out, this trim will actually just pop right off. Okay, so we went ahead and got a rough measurement to cut out our fabric. So what I did was I just laid it over top of this Luan here to keep that fleece back from getting very dirty. And we just cut straight line all the way across. Now, the way I did it, I left a little bit of overhang. As you see, I took 2 clamps up at the top of the door and draped my fabric over top. The reason I did that is, like I said, I cut it with a little bit of overhang. I don't know if you can see, this is where your door ends right here. So we've got about a 1/2 inch overhang on each side all the way down. So I wanted to make sure that this was perfectly straight and even, so that way when I start gluing and actually squeegeeing up this door, that I'm not going to get off track one way or another. So we're dead on even at the moment. And what I'll be doing is, like I said, I'm going to start from the bottom. We're going to pull this back and spray the door and the back side of this fleece here with our 3M Super 90. This is the stuff that Newmar actually recommends for their OEM fabric, and I've looked on a ton of forums. A lot of people tend to use this Super 90 here. This is actually the stuff that we've used on most of our door fabric replacements as well. So once I spray that on the door and the fabric, we're going to let it set for about a minute, minute and a half, and let it get tacky to the touch. So we should be able to touch the glue and pull away, and it should feel almost stringy. Once that tacks up, we'll go ahead and put the sheet over top, squeegee everything smooth, and then as we're doing that, you're going to notice that we're going to take our squeegee here and start tucking the fabric back into where the trim goes. And like I said previously, the reason we're doing that is we're going to cut off most of the excess and have just enough to tuck in to where whenever we snap our trim back in, that's going to hold it tight and make sure that there's more than enough fabric to where shrinkage isn't a problem. I'm loving the fabric that we got. My one gripe about it, if I had to nitpick, would be the way it came, where it was folded up in the package. It did cause some creasing in the fabric, but we just let this thing sit outside in the sun for like 2 hours. So most of these creases came out, and what didn't, we're going to be squeegeeing them out anyway. All right, so before we start to get ready to glue, what I want to do is I want to go halfway up, so usually about underneath the window, and we're going to glue from the bottom up, place all of it, and then we'll cut out the window. That way we don't have all of this heavy fabric draping down and pulling it back off of the wood. As we just take fresh razor blade and cut out the door handle. Like I said, this doesn't have to be perfect because you've got this massive square here. So all you're looking to do is just get this door handle exposed and out. That way you don't have it pushing into the fabric itself, causing a problem. So this stuff cuts relatively easy. Just gonna wanna make sure you cut this door handle out. Like I said, doesn't have to be neat, doesn't have to be pretty. And once we get this door handle actually exposed here, you'll see that this fabric starts to set back on it, on the wood itself. So now that we're flush, you can see where the actual trim of the door goes here. We've got plenty left over to work with, and we'll cut that out after we glue. We're gonna go ahead and glue probably to about up here. Once we get that glued and squeegeed down, tucked on the sides, we're gonna go ahead and cut out the window. You see all this material right here? Unfortunately, that's just waste. Once we get all of that material out, we'll let go of our clamps, and then we'll have a couple inch sections on each side here that we can actually let drape down. Now that the bottom section of our door is done here, next thing we're going to do is start cutting out a good section of this window. I'm not going to cut it perfect yet. I just want to get the bulk of this weight of this top part of our fabric here off of the sheet. That way I can take my clamps off, roll it back down, and now from this point I can start gluing up and rolling up as we glue. I said not cutting it perfect at the moment, so I'm just going to find where the door or the window actually is just by pushing it in. I'll come a couple inches from the inside and just start taking the fabric out, trying to keep it relatively neat, but like I said, I'm not really worried at the moment about it being perfect. So we'll just go all the way across, just removing the bulk of this fabric, trying to make sure we're not going too far, staying a couple inches away from the outside of the window. That way, just in case, whenever we're coming back up here, we actually have room to maneuver with some extra fabric if we need it. Like I said, a really good fresh razor blade works wonders for this fabric. There we go. Now we can save this sheet for something extra later. But for now, we have a rough cut out of our window. As you see here, I've still got plenty room on all my sides until I actually hit this wood. I'll probably touch this up a little bit more, that way I can actually get the glue down in here better. But for the most part, we're good to go ahead and start rolling this down and gluing the rest. got our fabric glued. I know it was probably a little more difficult to see on video how much adhesive we were actually using, but we were pretty liberal with it. Now, like I said before, we did get a thicker material, something that I've noticed with the OEM fabric as well as other off-brand fabrics that we've used in the past. If you use too much adhesive, it's going to soak into the backing of this fabric and actually cause it to bubble while you're trying to get it to adhere. So we'll go through this whole door, check all of our spots and make sure that we have no more bubbles. We'll pull it back, spray it, let it tack up and stick it again. But after we do that, we're going to go ahead and cut out our door handle and our window and leave probably 1/4 to 1/2 inch of material over top of it. We're not going to cut it straight on because, like I said, we want to allow for shrinkage. We don't want the same problem we had before. And after that, I'll show you guys on another time lapse. We're going to go through on all of our perimeter of this door and trim and tuck, trim and tuck. It's going to be a little tedious, but like I said, it allows for us to stick that trim in there and make sure that it's not going to shrink back. So we have gotten pretty much everything done. Door handle assembly is in. We still have yet to do the window trim, but our trim pieces for the perimeter of the door are in everywhere except for the very bottom piece. So I was going to show you guys how easy it is to put that in. Again, bevel on the side, on the back side of the trim. So we're going to take that bevel and put it against the metal of the door. Now, like I said, when we've got extra fabric tucked inside of there, that's going to help this be a little more secure. So it takes some force, but you have to sort of snap it in and roll it down with your hands to make sure that it seats flush. Now, this isn't all the way seated because we've got that extra fabric in there. So just take a dead blow or some sort of rubber mallet and just give it light taps inward and downward to make sure that it's seating in there pretty flush. Anywhere that hasn't stuck, you'll hear it snap in, which we are seated in there. So be careful hitting on your trim pieces. They are plastic and they will break if you hit them hard enough. Okay, so we went ahead and placed our window trim. It was a pretty tight fit. It was already a tight fit before we had the fabric overhanging on the inside of this. So that extra fabric is just ensuring that that's not going to shrink back in the future. So now all we have to do is just go ahead and reinstall all of our square-headed self-tappers around this trim here. And after that, we should be good to go to put our rubber stoppers on and our screen door latch. We are completely finished with the door. We've cleaned it up, checked everything. We're fully adhered and good to go. This is why Doug preaches so much about our PDI process. This particular job is roughly about 3 hours of labor. So it's $160 an hour, so about $480 for labor. The parts alone, call it probably $80 for parts. And of course, if you have a job like this done elsewhere, they're gonna upcharge for parts. They're probably gonna charge double, something along that nature. So you're talking well over $500 for a job like this. Wouldn't shock me if somebody charged up near $800 for it. But nonetheless, in our PDI process, like Doug says a million times, we take the risk out of buying a coach because this coach, although it needed this door done, this is a complete free of cost to the customer. It's something we take care of and we do it with every single coach. As soon as it's under contract, we get it in here and tackle anything that it needs on our dime. If you guys enjoyed the video, please do give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and please let us know if you want to see any other service videos in the future. But I'll see you guys in the next one.